All right, guys. So we're going to do a couple more examples. These are going to be, if you look at them, there's a little more going on. So it's going to be the same thing we've always done, right? It's always whenever you solve for anything, right? And you got one variable, you always try to get the term with the variable by itself on one side, right? And I call that the whole cows and chickens approach, right? You get cows on one side of the barnyard and chickens on the other. And then you try to get the variable down to a coefficient of 1, and you'll do that by a variety of things. For a lot of these, you're going to have to do, you might have to do more than one thing, right? You might have to divide and then raise it to a power. Okay, sometimes you just have to divide, sometimes you have to multiply something. It just depends. It's like you have to look at what's going on with it and make a decision. All right, so for this one right here, we got cube root of x plus 3 equals 7. All right, so I'm going to set this up, and we're gonna go really old school here, okay? And I'm going to set up my fence. Okay, we're going to go like this, right? Set up our fence. So the first thing we got to do is we want to get this term by itself so that we can do our thing on it, right? So we got to get rid of this plus 3. Now you notice this plus 3 is not under the radical sign. So we can't just go cubing things right now because that's going to give us some crazy results. So the first thing to do, and it's actually the easiest thing to do, is just get rid of this. And I can do that because it's not associated with the radical. If it were associated with the radical, I'd have to deal with the radical first, but it's not. It's off to the side. This radical term is completely doing its own thing. So you just do the opposite, right? It's adding, so we're going to subtract 3, right? Land of opposites. Welcome to algebra. 7 minus 3 is 4, and then you get the cube root of x is equal to 4. Now, some of you might be able to do this in your head, right? But if you can't, that's totally cool. So what we're going to do is what we did in the last video, which is we're going to raise it to this index. We're going to raise it to the power that matches this index. So we're going to go 3, right? And because we're doing it with this side, and this is a balanced equation, we're going to do it to both sides. All right, so there we go. So we go this, right? And then what happens with this is this kind of wipes this thing out, and it gives it x. Right here, we'll bring our fence down a little more. And then we just do 4 to the 3rd power. So you go 4 times 4 times 4, and that will give you 64, because this gives you 16, and then 16 times 4 gives you 64. All right, so that's going to be, you know, your approach on most of these. A lot of times you're going to have to do an add and subtract step first, right? And that's totally normal, all right? This one, we're going to start kind of the same way, right? We've got, we build our fence, and we'll notice that we've got a little more associated with the radical this time. We've got a 5 multiplying by it, so we're going to have to deal with that in a second, but we're going to get rid of this first. Usually do your adding and subtracting step first. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides, and notice I say usually. It's not, you know, there's no rules that are like set in stone as far as like what you have to do first, but pretty much there's an easy way to do this, that, or easier, so that you're not clobbering yourself with this. All right, you got 20. Now the next step is I want to get this square root of m by itself. I'm not going to sit and square this first until I get this by itself. So when I get this by itself, so the easiest way to do this is to just divide it by 5. And the reason we're dividing it is because it's multiplying by it, because anything that's right next to something else in algebra means they're multiplying, right? If you have, you know, 3x, that means 3 times x, right? If you have 4 next to a parentheses, right, and it's the 5 there, that means 4 times 5. So that's, you know, we have to kind of remember that, right? So these cancel each other out. That's why you divide by that thing, right? So you get the square root of 5. No, you do not get the square root of 5. You get the square root of m. My apologies. And then 20 divided by 5. Well, I did it again. Yikes. So you get the square root of m, Mr. Simons. There we go, m. 20 divided by 5 is 4. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to square both sides. And the reason we're squaring it is because if it doesn't have an index, it's 2, right? And that's the power we're going to use, right? And so we do it to both sides. 4 squared is 16, and square root of m squared is just m. and then you get n is equal to 16. So this is, again, the general principles of what we're going to follow for doing these. These are not insanely hard once you get the hang of them and you just remember like the squaring and the cubing thing and what you got to do for them. All right, so we'll stop the vid here, and then we will pick up in the next one.